going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to more C4, your home for all Philadelphia Eagles content here this upcoming offseason. I want to do a little bit of a new series now that we are in mock draft season. The combine's just around the corner, where when we see the big names in the draft committee, I'm talking the Daniel Jeremiahs on NFL.com, NFL Network, the Mel Kipers on ESPN, the Dane Bruglers on The Athletic. When they drop a mock draft, everyone always in the draft community flocks to see what they're thinking. They're connected, they're tapped into NFL scouts. They know these prospects better than anybody. And when they drop the mock drafts, I want to take a look at who they have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting, trying to understand, to either agree or disagree with that selection. And then I want to finish the video up doing a 7-round mock draft based off of the pick and player they have us selecting in the first round. So this mock draft by Daniel Jeremiah, one of the best in the business, was posted yesterday. And at pick 32, he has the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Malaki Starks, the safety out of Georgia. The Eagles add another versatile piece to the secondary in Starks, who joins the Georgia North All-Stars in Philadelphia. Very interesting pick. Depending on what corner of the internet you're getting your draft information from, the opinion on Malaki Starks can vary. Some people still have him as that blue-chip prospect that he looked like 2 years ago at Georgia. Other people a little disheartened with what they saw at Georgia this year. I don't know if he was fully healthy, but his play definitely dropped off a little bit. And maybe in some people's eyes, he's lost his blue chip status. But he still, in this scenario, clearly would represent best player available selection for the Philadelphia Eagles, because safety, and really anywhere in the secondary outside of maybe finding a Darius Slay, a Slay replacement, really shouldn't be on the Philadelphia Eagles' radar. But let's see if we can make a little bit of sense of what Malaki Starks is as a player. We're taking a look at Malaki Starks' PFF snapshot ahead of this upcoming draft. 78.3 overall grade, which is not too bad, but for a player like Malaki Starks, who entered this college football season with that blue chip status almost consensually, it's a little bit on the low end. You look at, where he's aligned all over the place. The versatility is clear. Lines up in the slot, which, it's fair to assume that's going to be Cooper DeJean's spot next year. He lines up in the box, which could be interesting, especially with Nakobe Dean's injury. If we bring back Zach Bond, you might be able to squeeze him out there and play in a little bit, closer to the line of scrimmage. Not necessarily going to say play him at linebacker, but you could probably have a line. There's a lot of times that you would have Avonte Maddox was squeezing himself on the field there. I don't know how many games. You guys probably like me were like, why the hell is Maddox out there? Like, there's no one hurt. So, sometimes Vic Fangio would have an extra DB out there, and maybe that could be a spot to utilize Malaki Starks. Also had 400 snaps down deep. I think when you look at him, like if you want him playing closer to the line of scrimmage, you look and he has 7 missed tackles, which for the class is not that bad in comparison to some of the other top safeties. Like, just looking at some of these top available options, you have Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, and he missed 13 tackles. Sebastian Castro out of Iowa missed 12. Winston was hurt. Emenwari out of South Carolina, big-time tackler, also missed 7, but tackling is arguably his biggest strength. Makubu from Texas, formerly of Clemson, with 13 missed tackles. He's more of a cover guy. So, in comparison to the grand scheme, he is one of the better tackling safeties in this year's class. And, kind of feels like a requirement to play in a Vic Fangio defense. You gotta tackle. So, outside of just acknowledging that this could just be a BPA, player that Philly could have graded as a top 10 prospect, just fall in their lap at 32, you draft him, you figure it out later. But you'd have to question the value there, given the fact that clearly CJGJ is a starter. Exciting White, Reed Blankenship is a starter. Cooper DeJean is firmly entrenched as our nickel of the future, unless somehow, some way, like if Slay doesn't get retained, they want to move him on the outside, which I would totally be down for. But it feels like beyond Slay, these starters are pretty much locked in for the next 2 seasons. Beyond that, you look at the depth at safety. Sidney Brown, I think he can offer more to the team than just bringing juice on special teams, but it was real hard for him to get on the field. Felt like Vic Fangio had Tristan McCollum here ahead of him in the pecking order, and maybe that's just a little Canadian bias of myself of wanting Sidney Brown to get on the field more. But I think the optimism is, he's made splash plays. 2 years ago, had that huge 90-plus yard interception return, pick 6. You bring in Lewis Seen, who former highly regarded pick out of Georgia. Is there a chance that he can kind of come in and reclaim his career? And I almost feel like that could versus getting a Malaki Starks, maybe we just see if we can get something out of Lewis Cine the same way. And this is going to get repetitive. Anytime something happens in the NFL for a specific team in a specific circumstance, everyone thinks that that's going to become the norm, right? As soon as the Legion of Boom happened, everyone wanted Legion of Boom type players. This year for the Philadelphia Eagles, as soon as we have the success story in Zach Bond, anytime, and Mekhi Becton, anytime Philly goes out and gets a former bust and we bring him in, there's almost going to be this expectation that we're going to turn them around and they're going to magically play up to the expectations they had leaving college. So I think understanding that that's going to become cliche, there's still optimism that maybe the talent is still there with Cine and he's just been misused in his time bouncing around the league, and that could be a solid safety prospect. Ergo, why use a pick at that safety spot? Why not see if Cine could be the next great success story for Vic Fangio and this Philadelphia Eagles defense? From a contract standpoint, CJGJ is here for another 2 years. I don't think we have to worry about this potential out. I'm almost certain he's going to be here until the end of the 2026 season. And I would make the argument, man, even as he gets a little bit older, you're going to want to pay whatever it costs to keep him here in the building. You need that guy. You need that mentality out there on the defense. I think we would go to great lengths, even if his play starts to drop off a little bit. The value that he brings as a team captain and a leader on the defense, that is worth the price of admission. Then you take a look at Reed Blankenship, same kind of deal. Just recently got a little bit of an extension. Things get a little murky, but exciting whites makes a lot of sense. And a part of being on an NFL team, there is a marketability aspect. All right, Jeffrey Lurie, if the Eagles find a way to market exciting whites and keeping Reed Blankenship, who from a play standpoint on the field absolutely deserves to be a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a success story from the Philadelphia Eagles. How he likes rewarding those success stories, these UDFA fines, to get them into long-term starters and making them stay in Philadelphia for as long as possible. I don't think Reed Blankenship at the end of this contract, 26, 27, is going to get a gigantic market. It's not like he's an elite safety, but he's a very good safety for our scheme. I think there's marketability there where he's going to be making extra money for the Philadelphia Eagles and extra cash in Jeffrey Lurie's pocket. I don't think in this scenario, even if we get Malaki Starks, it would be done under the assumption that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Reed Blankenship are on their way out, or they're not going to get a second contract with the team. So I think all in all, man, it's just a murky situation to have Philly get Malaki Starks. But at the end of the day, this happened in real life. I think very similarly to when we drafted an offensive lineman. When Philly got Landon Dickerson, I wanted J.O.K., the linebacker that went on to the Browns. He's been a beast there. Either one of those picks would have been awesome. But there's now a feeling, and there has been for quite some time, even with the Andre Dillard misses, that if Philly drafts a lineman, maybe even higher than expected, you should feel good about it because somewhere along the line, Jeff Stoutland said, go get this guy. Thumbs up, seal of approval. Feel like with what we saw with Vic Fangio last year, if Philly takes a surprising defensive player, maybe not a perfect fit, maybe something that's kind of out of left field, I almost think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt because somewhere along the way, Vic Fangio went, I want that guy for my defense. Go get me him, Howie. And we kind of just have to be like, all right, trust the process. All right, so based off of Malaki Starks going with the first pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, I want to do a mock draft on the following of this. We have pick 64, 96, 129, 162, 166, and 169. That's just below the screen there. All right, well, again, you can kind of see the team needs here. I agree with a lot of them. I think most of you would agree with a lot of them that, if you're going from edge, left to right, safety probably would be there. I think safety would be very much aligned with probably quarterback, probably wide receiver, where if there's undoubtedly best player available, we could take anybody. The rich get richer. But it is certainly not a premier position. And with this selection, if this is what happens in real life, I do think there needs to almost be an element outside of this to draft for need. You go luxury in the first round, but we still need edge rush help. We still need to retool the defensive line. What's going on with Zach Bond? Are we got to find a hybrid-style linebacker that can fill that void? What about tackle? Do we have Lane Johnson's successor? Is that going to be a top priority? Tight end, Dallas Goedert can't stay healthy. Do we need to go out and find a successor there? So there's a lot of interesting moves that could be made overall for the Philadelphia Eagles going into this draft, but I think when you go luxury in the first round, you almost need to prioritize your needs from there on out. So at pick 64, I'm going to have the Philadelphia Eagles future-proofing a position. I think we saw some of the best football out of Jordan Davis during that playoff run. We drafted Jordan Davis as high as we did over Kyle Hamilton. under the assumption that this 6'6", 360-pound athletic freak who is not playing a lot of snaps at Georgia, but a great run defender, would be able to develop and use those tools to kind of become a complete defensive tackle. Unfortunately, now it may be trending because of how he finished the playoff run, that he's, putting it all together. But unfortunately for his body of work, Jordan Davis has just been a early down run defender, hasn't really maximized the value of the pick, even though I think he does a lot of dirty work and a lot of unheralded work that won't show up on the stat sheet. But he's going to be up for contract sooner than later. And if, the price goes up, I think I'd be looking here at 64 at Deion Walker out of Kentucky. Do you know anything about Deion Walker? Well, imagine him and Jordan Davis playing next to each other. Jordan Davis, 6'6", we'll say 350 to be generous. Deion Walker is 6'7.5", 345 pounds. Didn't have the best year. Honestly, a very similar draft story to Malaki Starks. Was almost regarded as a blue chip player last year. Last year, as you can see, he had 8 sacks. We had 8 sacks, 4 QB hits, 39 hurries for a 6'7.5", 345-pound D tackle. Now, this year, Kentucky was hot garbage, one of the worst teams in the SEC. So it's kind of a down year for everyone, and I don't think when the team is bad, you're expecting to get carried by a nose tackle. But for a player, he's on the younger side. It's not like you're getting one of these prospects that's 22, 23, 24. He will be 20 at the time of the draft. I think in the second round, it's just a win-win for the Philadelphia Eagles. If things go south with Jordan Davis, he doesn't continue to develop, doesn't look like a guy that you're going to pick up his fifth-year option, doesn't look like a guy that even if you pick up the fifth-year option is going to get much playing beyond that, you have a successor. You have a similar body type that Philadelphia wants on the defensive line, and it just gives you another swing. Gives Vic Fangio another swing of having that big power guy that you can play with Jalen Carter, that you can play with your Milton Williams, that you can play with the Morrow Jones, and they would sub in to give you that interior pass rush. But what if you do this pick and Jordan Davis works out? What if Jordan Davis, the Jordan Davis that we saw affect the game as a pass rusher in the playoffs this year, showing signs for really the first time in his career that, like, oh my God, is he finally kind of putting this all together? What if you pair that with 2023 Deion Walker? What if we have a Jordan Davis at 6'6", 350 that can get after the quarterback the way he got out in the playoffs? And what if we have Deion Walker playing next to him when you kick out Jalen Carter to D-end at 6'7", 350 that has the potential of getting 8 sacks and 39 hurries? It literally would be mind-breaking. So I think the opportunity to get a chance to harness in and bring out 2023 Deion Walker, I think Vic Fangio could do that. I think that would be just football terrifying nightmare fuel to land him in the second round. Next up at pick 96, I'm going to stay on the defensive line and almost trust the board here on the side. I'm going to look at Ashton Gillotte, the edge rusher out of Louisville. I think when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles pass rush going into next season, it's almost fair to assume Brandon Graham is going to be gone. Fair to assume Josh Sweat likely is going to be gone. Who knows what the hell's going to happen with Josh Huff? You look, are we going to make the ridiculous trade for Myles Garrett? I mean, Vegas thinks Philly is certainly in the running, but it's too ridiculous and outlandish to kind of factor that in when you're discussing the offseason realistically. I think if you're planning the Eagles defense going forward, Nolan Smith, J.Alex Hunt, you feel pretty damn good, especially with how they played in that Super Bowl. That, like, we got something there, but you need other guys, especially in Hunt's case. Hasn't been a full-time starter. You can't just assume he's going to be able to play like Josh Sweat's amount of snaps. That's just a little ridiculous. In a perfect world, Bryce Huff stopped sucking and would be a valuable part of this pass rush next year. But I think the likelihood of that is as likely as him getting traded or some sort of scenario like that working out. So Gillotte is a proven pass rusher. I feel like stylistically gives you some Brandon Graham. 6'3", 275 pounds, wins with power more than speed and finesse. 87 PFF grade, and he's been one of the more consistent pass rushers over the last 2 years. Going back 2023, 9 sacks, 42 hurries. This year, 5 sacks, 41 hurries. Constantly making plays around the quarterback. I think body type, what Vic Fangio likes to look for in a pass rusher. Now, I don't think he's going to be a guy that, look, you can see down here, doesn't really line up off ball. Not going to have him probably dropping back into coverage a whole lot. But you're drafting a pass rusher. I don't need a true hybrid. That's what hopefully we re-sign Zach Bond. You can utilize him for. But Gillotte would give us very good edge depth in this point in time in the draft. Next up, I pick 129. I'm getting one of my favorite players in this class. He's been my draft crush at the tight end position. That is Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. With Terrence Ferguson, you're getting more of a traditional pass-catching tight end. I think he has the frame and athleticism to develop as a blocker. 74 PFF grade. He had 43 catches, just under 600 yards, 3 touchdowns this year for the Ducks. Last year had 6 total touchdowns. Similar stat line. He's been a consistent receiver there for them. I feel like a lot of those catches too, safety net, first down, chain moving type plays, has the occasional spectacular catch up for grabs. But I think when you look at the Eagles tight end room, Dallas Goedert just can't stay healthy, man. It's unfortunate because when he is healthy, I think he's one of the most underrated tight ends in the league and plays closer to a top 5 tight end than he does a top 10 tight end. I think Grant Calcaterra, as just viewed as a pure receiving threat, certainly adds something to the offense. He's found some chemistry with Jalen Hurts. One question I never asked, did he play at Oklahoma when Jalen Hurts was there? I feel like they might have overlapped. But, I mean, gives us something as a receiver, but he's god-awful as a blocker. Don't really get much there out of him. So I feel like a balance would be adding another body into this tight end room. I mean, a lot of people talk potentially in, like, hypothetical scenarios in the first round. If a Tyler Warren or a Colson Loveland are there, could Philadelphia kind of have history repeating itself when we selected Dallas Goedert while we still had Zach Ertz setting records for the Eagles off. Like, tight end feels like a spot that Howie Roseman wants to value having a successor, having that continuity in place. So when it is time to move on from Dallas Goedert, we have someone on the roster. I don't know if they view Grant Calcaterra that way, and I think someone like Terrence Ferguson could absolutely fit the bill out of Oregon. Next up, I pick 162. I'm going to address the interior of the offensive line. We're going to grab Miles Frazier, guard from LSU. It is interesting to see and think what this Eagles offensive line is going to look like next year, because the big question is Mekhi Becton, the big ticket. Are they going to resign Mekhi Becton? Is there going to be a market for Mekhi Becton? I thought about this yesterday. I think on the open market, there's a chance that some teams could potentially be scared off by Mekhi Becton because you don't know. Are you going to get the Mekhi Becton that was a headache on and off the field for the New York Jets? Or are you going to get the Mekhi Becton that was motivated and was he only made it motivated because Jeff Stoutland's an absolute god? And if teams are not sure they want to play that Mekhi Becton roulette, could be an affordable contract to keep him here in the building. Plus, we'll be interested to see how Jeff Stoutland and Howie Roseman value him. Is he a guard now? And he's like, what, 25? Could he be a successor to Lane Johnson? But I feel like under the assumption that maybe he is gone, maybe he gets a bag thrown at him by an O-line desperate team, it does seem like we're going to be moving with Tyler Steen at guard. So if you're going with that, you're going to be down a depth guard. And I feel like Miles Frazier here gave up 0 sacks last year at LSU. 3-year starter and only given up 4 sacks in 3 seasons. Plus, build-wise, 6'3", 340 pounds. He's built like, stout like some big and thick in the interior of that offensive line. I feel like he'd be a great fit. Plus, fits the pedigree that Howie Roseman now seemed to have adopted is, if we're drafting you on the O-line, for every Jordan Mailata Hail Mary, he wants blue chip program, blue chip type players, and you might get that for a steal day 3 in Miles Frazier out of LSU. The next 5th round pick, I mean, it almost feels like I'm just following the top name out on this board here, but that's kind of how it's falling. I'm going to look at R.J. Harvey Jr., the speedster running back out of Central Florida. Undersized, maybe, but Kenneth Gainwell is an interesting case. I think much like the offensive coordinator hire of letting Nick Sirianni get his best friend, Kevin Patullo, on the staff as a new offensive coordinator, I think he's been very public, Nick Sirianni, in the media, saying that Kenneth Gainwell is his favorite player. And I think from a budgetary standpoint, Philly might not have enough money to throw at a backup running back, but I think they might let Howie just, hey, Nick, great job. Pick one player you could keep. We'll let you keep Kenny Gainwell. And I like Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell is an RB2, awesome in that role. Even if we keep him, if we don't keep him, running back I think will be something Philly might want to try to address in day 3. With Harvey still on the board, that's a surprise pick. A lot of people were expecting to run a fast time at the Combine. His production has been elite the last 2 years of Central Florida. 2023 had 1,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 yards plus a totem. Can catch the ball in the backfield. This year, almost 1,600 yards, almost 7 yards a carry, and 22 touchdowns. Great speed, great vision, great burst. That's just the kind of production you love to get this night of late. And if you had to say something about Kenny, KG's not a burner. So if you have Kenny Gainwell be that 3rd down back, I think having kind of a break glass in case of emergency speedster on the roster, Philly really wants to carry 4 running backs. So obviously, Will Shipley's there. I think Harvey gives you a little bit of juice. I think this selection, though, is done more so if Kenny Gainwell does walk and we have just Saquon, Will Shipley on the roster, I think someone like Harvey would give us a great plan. And then if not, I think if you want to carry 4 running backs, you want someone that can give you some juice on special teams, Harvey makes a lot of sense in the 5th round. And then with our final pick, 169, I'm not going to go right off the list. I am going to select a new candidate to Jeff Stoutland U. Gerard Christian Leitner out of Oregon State, the German machine. Trust me. I don't know. Might not be German. Sounds German name, but graded out really, really well. His first year at Oregon State, he was a part of not so great offensive lines at Colorado, but putting his best foot forward in 2024, grades out as a top 20 lineman in all of college football, gave up 3 sacks, but it's the profile. It's finding someone that Stoutland U can welcome and embrace and develop. And at 6'9", 300, I think he's 330, 325, 330, somewhere in that range. Give me a guy right there that we could develop a little bit. Give me just, it's Mekhi Becton all over again. Gigantic human being, meet Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland, meet gigantic human being. Make them a great lineman. Make them a great prospect. For his case, if we can get halfway decent swing tackle out of them, as long as we have Mailata and Lane Johnson on the offensive line, that's the kind of picks I want to see. I said at the very beginning of the video, if we draft and maybe even perceived in case of like expert rankings, an overdraft in offensive linemen, you can almost live with it because somewhere down the line, Jeff Stoutland went to Howie Roseman's office and pounded on the table for him to get that lineman when they did. But me personally, with how good of a coach and developer Stoutland is, you want the guys like the Mailatas. You don't want us to be spending premium draft picks on the offensive line. You want to find the diamonds in the rough that he can really go out there and develop. And I figure a guy with elite size traits and tools that just needs that refinement to put it all together, I would take that swing with Tank Lightenhand. So there we go, a mock draft off of Daniel Jeremiah, having the Philadelphia Eagles go with an absolute luxury pick in Malaki Starks at pick 32 in the first round. I like what we did here. I think we ticked off a lot of boxes. I think I'm right in justifying that if we go luxury pick, we kind of need to draft, not necessarily for need, but with need strongly in mind for the rest of the draft. I would love to see Walker in Philadelphia, Gelati at edge. We'll be interested to see how they handle edge rush. That could be maybe a surplus requirement if they really think they can figure out with Huff. Do we win the Myles Garrett sweepstakes? Do we say screw it and try to bring back Josh Sweat after the Super Bowl run with the salary cap going up? There is uncertainty at edge, so I don't think you can get out of a mock draft without addressing that position, but it might not, come draft time, be an absolute necessity for Philadelphia to make that happen. Terrence Ferguson's one of my favorite tight ends. I'd love to bring him in. We go early in guard here, go guard before tackle, which maybe could be a hot take considering the needs for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think Frazier ticks a lot of boxes for what Howie Roseman likes to look into a lineman. We get Harvey as a running back, but if we bring back Kenny Gainwell, yeah, you might want to go somewhere different. Maybe look at wide receiver depth. And then we get a new member of Stoutland U. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about this mock draft in the comment section below. Could we maybe have thrown a linebacker in there, especially with Nakobe Dean? When's he going to be ready? When's he going to be healthy? What's going on with Zach Bond's contract extensions? I kind of took a little bit of a gamble there, avoiding some linebackers. Maybe in hindsight, we could have changed things up a little bit. But I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. And we will be back with a video like this similarly when we see new mock drafts from Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper, Dane Brugler, or anyone else that truly possesses and provides a unique Eagles mock draft experience. But that'll do it for me today, guys. Subscribe if it's your first time stopping by. Leave a comment in the comment section below how you feel about this mock draft. Who do you want the Philadelphia Eagles to select at pick 32 in the first round? And I'll see you back in the next one. Peace out. Love you. Have a good one.